Hello everyone, welcome to The Download, where we bring you discussion and analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today is Friday, thank God it's Friday, August 11th, 2023. I'm Simon Wraith, here with my two co-hosts, Kyle Copey and Christine Niles. A priest who was falsely accused of sexual abuse is officially back at his parish after about 4 years of quasi-exile. Father Edouard Perron has been reinstated as pastor of Assumption Grotto in Detroit. Now, as viewers may recall, he was unjustly suspended from priestly ministry in July of 2019. Christine, I think that you have some more information for us and some of the details of this case.
Right, so Father Edouard Perron celebrated Sunday Mass at Grotto, his parish, his first time doing so in little over 4 years. He announced from the pulpit at a traditional Latin Mass that Detroit's Archbishop Allen Vigneron finally gave him the go-ahead to offer public Mass at his own parish. He thanked the congregation for praying for him and noted that he will be retiring soon, this November in fact. In an email to friends on Monday, Father Perron clarified, quote, "There remain some minor restrictions not lifted which will be addressed in February 2024 when the term of the restrictions expires." And viewers may want some backstory for those unfamiliar on the false allegations against Father Perron that came to light 4 years ago. Sergeant Detective Nancy LePage and Episcopal Vicar Monsignor Michael Bugarin, LePage was actually Bugarin's parishioner, they interviewed Perron's accuser in July 2019. And like I said, LePage is a parishioner at Bugarin's parish. According to transcripts, they pressured the accuser to say he was sodomized by Perron. The accuser denied that happened, but they put it in their report anyway and submitted their report to the Archdiocese's review board. Based on that false report, the Archdiocese suspended Father Perron. And not just that, Bugarin went to media with the allegations, and national headlines blasted the fake rape charges for weeks, including Associated Press, Fox News, and others. Perron sued LePage and Bugarin for defamation. And in August 2020, a 3-judge panel unanimously found in favor of Father Perron. And LePage was made to pay him $125,000 in damages. And Father Perron would later go on to dismiss the lawsuit against Bugarin as a condition of being reinstated to public ministry. We should note one of the most egregious aspects of this case was Father Perron actually found out about the accusations from the media. He didn't find out from the Archdiocese. He was actually sitting on his back patio, I think eating lunch. He got ambushed by Associated Press reporters asking about these allegations. He had no idea what they were talking about. And yet, how did they know for him? It's because Bugarin went to the media. I mean, I don't even have the words for how unethical that is. And that was just the start.
It was, yeah. I remember this happened initially. It happened over the 4th of July weekend, I think it was when it kicked off. I think 4th of July was like the Thursday or something that year. And I think we actually may have heard about it on the 4th of July. It was kind of, after burgers and dogs on the grill and everything, and then we got this somewhat distressing news. I think one of the most interesting things with it, because we've reported on a lot of these kind of cases, these cases of accusations of misconduct, of all kinds of misconduct, sexual deviancy and sexual misconduct, and also financial allegations, etc., etc. And there's always somebody who has, or some group of somebodies who has a knee-jerk reaction to the issue. Oh, Father Bob could not do this. Father Bob is such a holy man. Father Bob has a devotion to the Holy Face. Father Bob he says the Latin Mass. Father Bob couldn't do this. He baptized my children. He did it. It couldn't possibly be Father Bob. And, I remember that happening with Father Perron, with a group of people that I was with, and they said, oh, Father Perron couldn't do this. He's such a holy man. He's such a da-da. And I said, which kind of got me yelled at on the 4th of July by people, I said, yeah, that's what everyone says about their people. And there was, I think that the important thing was to actually say, you know what, this is an allegation, and everyone says that, oh, it couldn't possibly be him because he's so holy, he's so this, he's so that. And I remember thinking, you know what, I know Father Perron, he's my pastor, was my pastor for many years. For 4 years, it's kind of been in limbo, back to my pastor again, absolutely wonderful. And I know him well, I've been to confession with him, I've, eaten with him, etc., etc., etc. But it's like, you look at it and you go, okay, this accusation is here. I'm not saying it's true, but I'm not going to make some knee-jerk reaction to say it wasn't. Obviously, Father Perron responded to these allegations accusations in completely the appropriate way. He defended his good name, and he did interviews with us. We've had a number of interviews that we've done with him, but he remained very humble. He didn't lash out against people, and he didn't go off into one of these kind of celebrity priests things where he's going around and kind of making hay out of the fact he's accused. He obeyed the restrictions. He did follow the process as it went through, and I think really what this whole case is, this is actually an example for how priests should deal with these kind of accusations, because he was ultimately vindicated.
Right.
Yeah, and he did obviously talk to the media, us being one of them, as you just mentioned. But look at the contrast there between how he's treated, what he does, and then what Bugarin apparently gets to do, with no repercussions from the Archdiocese. Bugarin gets to go run off to mainstream media outlets and spread this fake charge all over the country, and Perrone is simply defending himself. Talks to us very quietly. You can go watch the interviews if you want. He's not making a big case out of it. It's not a big shouting thing trying to defend himself. He's just being calm, cool, and collected with it. Look at the contrast there, and look at the way he is treated versus Bugarin, who has faced, to my knowledge, no repercussions for what he did.
No, I don't think he has.
Yeah, right. So I was there that weekend, that July 4th weekend, I can't remember, when they made that announcement at the parish. Of course, Father Perrone wasn't there, and so they had these people from the Archdiocese making this announcement that he was suspended. And of course, there was a lot of uproar there that weekend. People were extremely shocked and confused. Monsignor Bugarin was there, and there was actually a confrontation with Monsignor Bugarin in the vestibule. I was there. I was actually got some of it on my phone, and people were obviously very upset. Michael Voris challenged Bugarin to ask, because this was another egregious thing that the Archdiocese did. In the public announcement of his suspension, they did not include in there that Father Perrone maintained his innocence. Normally, that's what dioceses do when they make these announcements. Normally, if you look at other announcements about this priest is accused, Father such and such vigorously maintains his innocence. They usually include that. The diocese did not include it here. So we want to show a clip of part of that confrontation.
Why wouldn't the diocese put in here that he maintains his innocence? If he did.
Out of here, Baptist
It's a pretty damning statement. Why wouldn't they put in here what he said? Yes, I did, or no, I didn't. It's true or it's not. Why wouldn't that be included? That's up to the bishop, archbishop, to decide. You guys are the ones who wrote this. This isn't a canon law thing. You guys trumped this thing up down at the chancery. So why don't you put in? He says, yeah, he maintains his innocence or not. To make the thing, well, he should be, a view of innocence. Did he do it or did he not? And what does he say? Yes.
What the canonical process?
No, that's not what the canonical process does not determine whether he did it or not. The canonical process moves through the thing to try to reach an outcome. Right now, he has told you, you were sitting in the room with him, he has told you this is true or this is not. Why don't you, in the midst of completely ripping his reputation to shreds here, put in here that he maintains his innocence or he admits his guilt? Why not? Why won't you do that? I'm not asking what he said. I'm asking, you're talking about the process. I'm asking, what about the process? Why won't you put that in here as part of the process here in the Archdiocese?
Why are we looking for guilt? We're not. We're not looking for guilt in that matter.
The process is determined by you, however, the Archbishop and his senior staff. So why isn't part of the process to include that he maintains his innocence or admits his guilt?
Will he be allowed?
Why is that not considered to be part of the process?
Will there be some sort of written statement or something
Excuse me,
coming from
I can ask my question about the process. You're talking about the process. I'm asking a question about the process.
So the canonical process from here will go to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith.
That's what the canonical process is. The issuance of this document, however, is the Archdiocese's process. For example, when Father Phillips made his, when Supich screwed him over in the Archdiocese of Chicago, I'm sure you know all about Father Phillips.
No, I don't.
Well, you don't know about St. John Cancer. So anyway, same type of thing, accused of something. He, in the statement, said from the Archdiocese of Chicago that he maintained his innocence. That was included in their statement about him. Why wouldn't, whichever it is, innocence or guilt, as part of the Archdiocese process, why would you not decide to include that in your statement? This is not the CDF statement, it's the Archbishop's statement. Why isn't that in there as part of the process? He says yes or no, I'm innocent or I'm guilty. Why wouldn't you include that in the process?
It's just the way we work.
That's just, yes it is. Yes it is. That is just the way you work. That's the answer. That's it. I have to say, oh, we were so, this actually went on for like 20 minutes, so you're just seeing the tail end of it. But that at one point, the most outrageous, when everybody was very upset and he wasn't answering the question, he kept saying over and over, it's just the process, just the process, the process. And then suddenly he's like, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord. And
well,
we're just all, we were just all like, okay, no, don't you dare hide behind that spiritualization and pious facade so that you can get out of this situation. You answer our question.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of a common thing. To be fair, with a lot of people, I mean, I remember you and Michael in the airport, and there was just the talking, I think, with a bishop who'd done some cover-up or allegedly done some cover-up, and his secretary or what have you was going around just saying, God bless you, God bless you, God bless you.
Yes.
Yeah, for
shoving
you around. For people who didn't know and didn't notice, of course, the tall padre that Boris was talking to there is Monsignor Bulgarin.
Tall.
It's very tall. Yeah, no, he's extremely tall. I mean,
and he's a padre.
And he's a padre. That's why I say. So that's just my joke. Yeah, the tall padre that he was talking to there is Monsignor Bulgarin, who is the very highly placed in the Archdiocese, and obviously was sent, kind of to do this. And I think, really, in many ways, Archbishop Vigneron has been very much let down by Bulgarin, because you see, the problem is every single false accusation of rape brought against, a woman who maybe, regrets a one-night stand or something, every single false accusation of sexual abuse brought against a priest by somebody with an axe to grind or something like that, or indeed every single manufacturing of evidence by an investigator in collusion with law enforcement. These things do not just strike at the at what is owed the individuals who are accused. It's not just unjust to them. It strikes right at the heart of the entire idea of justice and investigation and jurisprudence. It strikes right at the heart of that. Monsignor Bulgarin has absolutely let his boss down in a grotesque way. You went and you made up stuff. You made up stuff in collusion with LePage, and you have now damaged the ability of the Archbishop to investigate this kind of stuff. And it's like, man, if I was the Archbishop, I want his head on a platter. That is, yeah, it's just utterly, utterly terrible. Anyway, we just watched that video, which is obviously very, dramatic and provocative. Let's see something of a lot more calm nature. Father Perrone did a number of interviews with us, and we also had him on our persecuted priest panel in the summit, because obviously there's part of the thing there. Anyway, but we've got this great interview here with Father Perrone, which really I think captures kind of the man's essential quality and just why we love him so much as our pastor. So let's take a look at that.
I've always been a little bit outspoken about problems in the chancery, problems in the church in general. I've tried to be discreet about it, but I've always been open. And I've taken action throughout my priesthood to expose these things in the right way. And so I do have a kind of reputation for that. But I've always been respectful of the church. Of course, I love the church. It's given me my vocation and my faith. So I've tried to do this in a right way. Of course, you're going to ruffle feathers along the way, and no doubt I have done that. It's odd that this should happen to me at this point in my priesthood, though, because these things were, when you're younger, you're a little freer, a little more cavalier in your manner, and open. And as I neared towards the end of my assignment, I think I've just been more concentrating on the spiritual aspects of my priesthood without so much concern about what's going on out there, leaving that to God's good providence and the prayers of the people. So it's odd that this should all be coming to me now at this point in my priesthood.
Yeah, so at the time that the allegations came down, he was 70, okay? That's the age of retirement. I mean, it's
He'd already submitted his retirement,
right.
And it had been recently refused by the Archbishop.
And he had this stellar track record as a priest, known for his orthodoxy and fidelity, and of course loved for the traditional liturgy. And you can't help but see some parallels to the life of Padre Pio, because his first allegations, which were also brought, false allegations actually by a brother priest, sex abuse, okay? A brother priest. At the age of 73, Padre Pio was 73 when these allegations came. So he went through his own trial from fake abuse allegations that he had to endure for a couple of years. And there are a lot of parallels in this case. But what I want to know, and I encourage people to actually watch that entire interview, because later on you actually get a personal reflection from Father Perone on how he's taking all of this. And it is truly saintly. I don't like attaching the word holy to priests for the same reason that you don't. Too many people do it, and too many times they turn out to be wrong. I don't think you're holy just because you offer Mass a certain way, because you have nice homilies. But when I was standing there, because I was actually behind the scenes kind of watching that whole interview, and I listened to the whole thing, and I saw his demeanor, and he was saying that he wasn't bitter at all. He was not bitter. There was not a hint of bitterness in him at all, not a hint of resentment or even anger. And he said, this is the will of God. This is the will of God. I don't understand it, but I know this came from the hand of God, and that's how I have to see this. And I simply have to trust him. And then he said, and I've grown spiritually in ways that maybe I wouldn't have grown if this hadn't happened to me. And he said, I really miss my parishioners, because he wasn't allowed to have any contact. He was banned from even contacting his parishioners. And he said, but you know, I might be even doing better. I might be more effective for them offering my sufferings in reparation now than I could be just as pastor of my parish. And I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, this sounds like a saint to me. I mean, this sounds like a saint. He's going through this crucifixion, and he's handling it exactly the way that a saint would handle it. And as you mentioned, it's in total contrast to the way that some canceled priests are handling things. So much bitterness, so much anger, so much public cursing of their bishop, and you know, all this stuff. And it's like, look, that's a human reaction. I understand it. It's not a saintly reaction. Mm-hmm. This is a saintly reaction.
Yeah. The Padre Pio style of how to handle this situation, if you're a priest who's put in it, is definitely the way to go. Humility, docility, obedience, and submission to your bishop in the things that he's lawfully commanding you. That's the way to go. And that's exactly what Father Perone did all throughout this. Remember, how long was it? 4 years. I mean, what a travesty this is. You think of the parishioners at Grotto. They've been without this man's public ministry for 4 years. Think of all, the confessions he could have heard, the masses he could have offered, the marriages he could have done, the spiritual counseling he could have done. All of that was taken away from him, and taken away from the parishioners, rather, because that's who he serves. But it was, in, February of 2022, where the Archdiocese finally gave him back his faculties. Oddly enough, and this is, I don't know why this is, but they said, they took until now to restore him as the pastor of Grotto. They said, you can go, your faculties are restored. You can go do things elsewhere in the Archdiocese. You can go have Mass at other parishes, and he did. St. Joseph's Shrine is one of them, where he had Mass at least a couple times publicly. But he was not allowed to resume his public ministry at Grotto for some weird reason. Fortunately, though, he was able to interact with parishioners. Father Perone, I believe he's a musician himself.
Yes.
Yes.
He has, an accomplished
composer.
Yeah, he's an accomplished composer. He has a vast knowledge of sacred music, so he was able to work with the, musically with the parish there, which was a great thing. But also too, just getting back to his obedience and his humility. I mean, he was even willing to give up his, at the Archbishop's order, he was even able to not go through with the defamation lawsuit against Bugarin, which, from a moral theology perspective, it seems like he had every right to continue with that, despite what the Archbishop was saying. But he decided, no, I'm going to err on the side of obedience, and I want to get back to my parishioners as soon as possible. So I will issue this apology in order to do that.
Yeah. It's. I think I would be remiss if I didn't point out one particular kindness, I think is probably a word, that the Archbishop did extend to Father Perone some weeks or months ago. I can't remember exactly when. So Father Perone, as you said, for many years was very active in a music ministry at Assumption Grotto, and there was a parishioner there by the name of Ray Long, who was the organist, but also really just sort of Father Perone's right-hand man in terms of the organization of the music ministry, and beautiful orchestral masses with this beautiful, wonderful orchestra and a very highly acclaimed choir there at Assumption Grotto. Ray Long suddenly died just one day, just keeled over. Apparently he had a stroke. He was not sickly or anything like that. Just suddenly, it's just one of those very tragic things. He died, could not be resuscitated. And we were all much shocked and horrified. Please, of your charity, pray for his soul and for his family left behind. And the Archbishop did permit Father Perone to say his funeral mass, which was a very generous thing there that he did. But yeah, Father Perone, of course, is very well known for his devotion to orthodoxy in theology and in teaching, particularly devotion to the Latin Mass and the beauty of it. But really, yeah, it is his music ministry where it shines. As he says, as I said, there's these wonderful orchestral masses that he does. He's actually composed a couple of masses, so a couple of mass arrangements that he's actually composed, and they've been performed. And I'm not a tremendous judge of the quality of such a thing, but I certainly enjoyed them. I certainly thought that they were very good, and it was very nice there. Yes, he's done this wonderful work, and of course he's going to be back there. And as well, I want to give a shout out to Father John Bustamante, who is the associate pastor there. And Father John Bustamante at Assumption Grotto has been for 4 years, essentially kind of carrying this all on his own. He's had some assistance from some other priests who've become there, and there's various very, very fine priests who've come to do this. But Father John has just been an absolute workhorse all the way through this, and has just kept the parish moving along and making sure that there are no masses are skipped. There's always confession beforehand. Everything is going along. And as well, I just got to say that Father John has kept the parishioners in kind of a good spiritual frame of mind, that he has not allowed them to be overcome by a sense of bitterness, by a sense of hatred or anything like that he's really done that. So yeah, it's shout out to Father John, who's done some tremendous work.
He is. He's a very wonderful, humble priest.
Yeah.
But on this topic of obedience, it was something that was touched on during the men's Strength and Honor retreat. And I would especially encourage people to watch the last talk where Michael gave it in the church on Sunday, because he does touch specifically on this, priests being persecuted unjustly by their own spiritual fathers. I mean, I think that's the hardest kind of persecution. It's one thing to be persecuted by enemies out there, maybe by the government or by whatever. You kind of expect that. But when it's your persecution from your own family, right? Your own spiritual family, your spiritual father, the archbishop, whom you thought you had a good relationship with, whom you thought you were close to and all that, and then suddenly they bring down the hammer on you, and then they won't listen to you. And that must be so incredibly difficult. So you have a number of priests who are in that situation. Father Perone was in it. But as Michael said in his talk, even if it is a terrible, horrible, wicked monster of a bishop, if he has lawful authority over you and he says this is what has to be done, your response, if you want to remain a loyal son of the church, is not to go into schism, not to say disobey, as unfortunately some of these canceled priests are saying. It is humbly submit. There's a scripture verse, 1 Peter 5:6, bow humbly under the mighty hand of God, and in due time he will exalt you. And that's what he did with Padre Pio. That's what he did with Father Perone. He ultimately vindicated them after their perseverance, their faithful, humble, obedient perseverance. And that's what God will do with anyone who will do that.
Yeah, and Simon mentions the fact that it had on the parishioners. You mentioned that, the Father Bustamante, who's currently there, was keeping them in good spirits, telling them to how to guide them through this spiritually. But the question still rose in the mind of many parishioners. Well, how do we fight back? What can we do? Obviously, there's the spiritual fighting, but they could do something in the civil arena, and they did. Around 20 parishioners from Grotto actually filed a civil lawsuit against the AOD. Bishop Vigneron and Bulgarin himself for $2 million, claiming there's a distressed cause, obviously, to the parishioners there for unjustly taking this priest away. We have a quote from, one of the complainants there. They said this, quote, John Doe, that's the accuser in this case, John Doe refused to give Bulgarin what he wanted. Remember, that's what he did. Bulgarin, LePage, they put words in his mouth. They put words in the testimony that this accuser never said. The accuser never said that Father Perone raped him, sodomized him. Those are put in there. The only thing the accuser said was simply that he was groped. That's all he...
Based on a repressed memory from 40 years ago.
Memory from a long time ago. So the quote goes on. So John Doe refused to give Bulgarin what he wanted. So Bulgarin just fabricated a rape allegation out of desperation and wishful thinking. I don't know where this process stands. Do we know where this lawsuit stands right now?
The court dismissed it, claiming that they didn't have jurisdiction because this was a church matter, and that's actually very common in these cases where you try to sue the archdiocese. The secular courts just don't want to get involved at all. They're like, no, we can't do this. So
yeah, they can't get involved there. I was actually invited to be part of the lawsuit by the people, because I am a parishioner there, and I was invited to be part of it, and I said that's probably not the best idea on the basis that I working for Church Milton, which we were really the people covering it, and to be honest, we were kind of the only people actually giving this any decent degree of coverage. That, you know, Fox News, Associated Press, et al. I mean, I saw my pastor's name crawl along on the ticker on Fox News, you know, and they were very happy to say, oh, the accusation is there. You know what? This ain't being reported. You know what? All those ditzy blondes in their silly cocktail dresses on Fox, you know, in between William Devane shilling for gold, you know, and My Pillow, they're not coming out and going, oh, by the way, Father Perone has been reinstated and all the charges were bogus. Not doing that.
Been so dishonest, because I did reach out to the Associated Press, because they're the one who broke the news, and if they had any integrity, they would have updated their report that Father Perone had been restored, since they're the ones who broke the news that he was suspended over this allegation, and they've never done that. But very quickly, just some background, because people were like, why are they going after Father Perone? Why? And people need to understand his background here in the Archdiocese of Detroit. He was actually a whistleblower way back in the 1970s at St. John's Providence Seminary, the original seminary here in the Archdiocese of Detroit. The huge scandal was that first-year seminarians were actually being shown pornography as part of moral theology or learning or whatever it was. They were actually being shown that. Gay sex, just horrible stuff. And Father Perone knew about it. He found out about it. He wrote a letter to the Vatican. He actually, and he told me this personally, he actually had his letter translated into Polish so that it could directly reach Pope John Paul II without any difficulties in understanding or translation.
And I think he hand-delivered it to the visitor when he was at the seminary.
I believe so. And as a result of his whistleblowing, what happened, the Pope actually hauled the rector to Rome, saying what is going on here, etc. Eventually, the seminary had to be shut down. So I think the Archdiocese probably is upset with. He had a target on his back way back.
Well, they actually brought a heresy charge against him. There was a heresy charge brought against him for, checks notes, failing to make a distinction between Jesus and Christ in your homilies. And I'm like, you could bring Paul up. You could bring St. Paul up on that charge on the basis that he just like flip-flops back and forth. Is there a distinction between Jesus and Christ? Yes, there is. It would take Dave Gordon and Brad Ely an hour to explain it, and you all would have fallen asleep by the end of it, because it would be that sort of thing.
And but
yeah, of course he won.
Yeah.
Of course there's no charge to answer there, Christine. That's like that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Download. Now, please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church, and giving thanks for Father Perone's restoration. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, vita dulcedo et spes nostra salve. Ad te clamamus exules filii Eve. Ad te suspiramus gementes afflentes, in hac lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos, ad nos converte. Et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende. O clemens, o pia, o dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you again for joining us for The Download. We premiere a new episode like this every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, you can always catch it and any other episodes you might have missed archived on our site, because it's a website, not a TV broadcast show. Remember those? Man, if you're as old as me, you do. Stopping for 2 minutes, having to rush to go get a cup of coffee because there was a commercial. Now you can just pause it. What a time to be alive. From all of us here at Church Militant, may God bless you.